de todo este año y es lo que nos...
Bienvenidos a La Palma, bienvenidos a la Transvulcania.
Welcome, benvenuti a la Transvulcania de las Terres. Bienvenidos a la Transvulcania 10, atención, 9, 8, 7,
¡Nos vamos con 6!
5, 4, 3,
¡Atención! 2,
1, and go!
¡La Transvulcania! ¡Águilas Terres 2024!
We want you to get to the break.
Hello again and welcome back to the channel where today I will be trying to run one of the toughest ultramarathons in the world, the Transvulcania. The race takes place every year on the remote and beautiful island of Palma, which is one of the Canary Islands. With a start time at 6 AM, the race begins under cover of darkness at the southernmost point on the island, Faro de Fuencaliente. The steep ascent up through the forest is rewarded above 2,000 metres when you leave the tree line well and truly behind you and you're treated to some stunning views of the sea, clouds, sky and mountains around you. All of these factors combined make for a truly breathtaking experience. The course begins at sea level at Fuencaliente and immediately there begins a punishing climb up to the summit of Desaida at a little under 2,000 metres. Now on the ridge you then begin to drop down in elevation and head towards El Pilar and El Rembeton. This part is characterised by lower temperatures as typically there's a microclimate which causes more clouds to roll in at this point. You then climb up in elevation again, leaving the trees far behind. The highest point of the race is the summit of the island, El Roque de los Muchachos, and from here there's a steep technical descent back down to sea level before a final climb up to the finish line in Los Llanos de Ariadne. The total distance of the race is about 74 kilometres and the total elevation climbed is about 4,500 metres. Despite this, I decided to set off reasonably quickly and make hay while the sun didn't shine. There were two reasons for this. First, it's easier to run when the temperatures are lower, and secondly, I didn't want to get caught up in the bottleneck that I knew would form at around 2 kilometres into the race. At this point, you leave one of the only bits of tarmac that you run on during the race and move on to the trails instead. When on the trails it's very difficult to overtake and therefore it's important to get a good head start amongst the other people that you might otherwise be stuck behind. This plan seemed to have paid dividends as by kilometre 3 I found myself in a good position in the middle of the pack.
Good morning. The strap so far has been caning it up the hill so that I didn't get the bottleneck at 2k, and then every time there's a gap, fucking close it.
The plan was working well so far and I made steady progress up the narrow, winding and technical footpath, and as I'd predicted, overtaking was incredibly difficult at this point. Eventually the narrow path widened out into a track and I was able to look back and appreciate the stream of head torches slowly wending their way up the mountain behind me, each of whom represented a person that I was ahead of. It was a really encouraging sight to see. The wide track, gently sloping uphill, allowed me to make relatively quick progress on this section, and I could see the lights of the seaside villages below begin to diminish as I climbed higher and higher up the hill. Soon enough, however, there came another steep uphill section for which the path narrowed and the pace slowed once more. By the time I'd finished this relatively short climb, however, the first rays of light from the sun were beginning to illuminate the sky, and as I entered the town of Los Canarios and the first checkpoint, the start of a beautiful sunrise began to dawn.
Gracias. Gracias.
1 hour in. Poles allowed now. I feel like Legolas taking them out with his backpack. And the sun's just risen.
The usually sleepy town of Los Canarios was now awake and buzzing with support, and it wasn't long before I saw a couple of faces that I recognised.
How you doing?
Missed you. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Going well.
Huh?
Going well.
I'm what, 1 hour?
Yeah, 1 hour. Yeah.
It's okay. I feel good, man. Okay, good. Have you seen your dad yet?
Yeah, just here.
Good night.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not going to stop at this. I'll see you later. Where will I see you next?
Sorry?
Where's the next place I see you?
Refugio El Pilar.
Okay, alright, see you then, mate. Yeah, bye.
I think it's fair to say that the residents of Los Canarias take their support for the Transvulcania very seriously, especially considering that it was only 7 AM at the time. I was bowled over by their support. I still had lots of water in my backpack and I wasn't tired yet, so I decided to run straight past the first aid station and continue on up the mountain. I began to make the climb out of Los Canarias, and I was aware that there were 10 kilometers now between here and the next aid station at Las Tesedas. This section of the Transvulcania brings you into the forest for the first time, and the early morning light was now starting to filter through the trees. I was beginning to settle into the race a lot more, now that the sun had risen. The madness of Los Canarias was behind me, the field had become a lot more stretched, and I felt like I could run at my own pace. That pace happened to be quite fast, but I wasn't too concerned. I was mainly content with the scenic views all around me, following this path as it wended its way through this forest, ever upwards into the clouds.
Look at the state of that.
It's impossibly difficult to pick a favourite part of this staggeringly beautiful race, but I have to say this section in the forest is a strong contender. With the sun fully risen now, golden rays of light were breaking through the forest, illuminating all with a stunning ethereal kind of light. Occasionally breaks in the tree canopy would appear, offering you exquisite views of the Atlantic Ocean and the other Canary Islands that lay dotted around. The islands of La Gomera and Tenerife jut impressively out of the water here. In particular, the highest point in Tenerife, a volcano called Teide, is a whopping 3,700 metres high, and its characteristic peak, high above the clouds, is clearly visible from this altitude.
That is gorgeous. Just see Teide.
At 2 hours and 13 kilometres into the race, I had yet to go downhill. I've been going uphill the entire way so far. Unfortunately, that was going to continue as I was still about 6 kilometres or about an hour to the top of the mountain of Teseida. The altitude wasn't the only thing increasing, as the temperature was now beginning to creep up as well. I was dipping in and out of the forest and the shade that it provided, and the pine needles, so soft and lovely underfoot, had since been replaced with volcanic ash. I would say that running on volcanic ash is similar to running on sand dunes. Both are very difficult and very energy sapping. Therefore, I was using my poles a lot, and I was just walking on these sections as I was conserving my energy for later. Soon enough, I arrived at the second checkpoint, Las Tesedas, which was good as I had drained my water bladder. I filled it up and added in a couple of rehydration salts for good measure. I would need to keep hydrated if I was going to deal with this heat. Another short ascent brought me to the top of Teseida. At nearly 2,000 metres high, I had spectacular views over where I'd just run, and also, more importantly, where I was about to go. In the distance, I could just about make out the telescopes on top of the Roque, although these were still 30 kilometres away. I was now on the ridge that ran right the way across the spine of La Palma. This was fantastic as, having been above the clouds for the last hour or so, I was now treated to some fantastic views on every side that I looked. I could once again see the heady heights of Teide poking out through a swirling mass of clouds, and looking down to my right, I could in fact see an ocean of clouds of my own. This has absolutely got to be one of the most stunning places I've ever seen, without a shadow of a doubt. In actual fact, the views were about to get even better, and I was quickly running out of superlatives to describe them. For the first time in the race, I was running downhill, and this meant that I could see a lot more of the island stretched out in front of me. One of the curious things about La Palma is that the clouds preferentially form on the east side of the island. They tend not to cross the ridge, just swirl there, and this gives you some fantastic views as you look down towards El Pilar.
20k in 3 hours 20, and I'm still feeling pretty fresh. I love this view. This is honestly the best view in the world. mistaken, because that is the best view in the world actually. And that's mother, is where we're going. And that is the finish line there in Los Llanos.
I was now losing elevation very quickly as the path sloped gently downhill and was very conducive to running fast. Although it was nice to make quick progress for the first time in the race, it was sad to leave these exquisite views behind. And soon I was enveloped by the forest once again. The path widened into a track once again and I could really stretch my legs at this point. I did some quick mental calculations and realised that I was running about 20 minutes faster than at this point last year. Whether this pace was sustainable or not, I wasn't sure, but I was enjoying it for now. Though the pace was rapid, I couldn't quite match the speed at which the guys running the half marathon were doing it. Their finish line was at El Pilar, which coincidentally would be where my next aid station was.
How you doing, bro? I'm good, man. I'm good, yeah. Yeah.
Yo, let's go!
I'm talking about my up with you again.
Hey, this is how it works.
Anyway.
All the best, let's go!
Cheers. Have a good day. Alright, see you later. That guy, we met on the bus on the way here. Hello, my man. Let's see. Let's see. I'll see you at the Rocket, man. See ya. It's a little reunion. I'm making a shit hot pace compared to last year. I think I arrived here last time in 4 hours 15, and this time I arrived 3 hours 50. I'm going, it's 3:56.
Perhaps I shouldn't have been quite so excited about the excellent pace that I've been making so far. If last year was any indication, it was going to be a long day at the office. And unfortunately for me, thanks to my earlier hubris and running far too aggressively, things were about to quickly unravel. I was now approaching the saddle point on the ridge. With an elevation of slightly less than 1400 metres, this is the point where the clouds start to rush in from the other side of the island. The air temperature immediately north of El Pilar dropped dramatically, and there was even a hint of rain in the air. While ostensibly this would seem the nicest part of the race to run, with the low temperatures, the cloud cover, and the gently sloping up and down hills that characterise this part of the race, this was actually starting to become really difficult for me. Basically, I started to become overwhelmed by nausea, and I would say that this ranks as one of my least favourite experiences in ultra running. Consciously, you're aware that you need to keep eating food in order to fuel you for the rest of the race, but your mind just can't deal with the fact that you have to eat. Potentially this experience isn't universal, but at least for me, I felt like if I ate any more sugary food, I was going to throw up. Things had got so bad by Renventon, I decided to walk it into the aid station. This was exceptionally bad news for me, as I still had over half of the race, around 40 kilometres, still to run.
I was feeling kind of rough coming into Renventon. I was just feeling quite sick. I felt like I didn't want to eat any more sugary stuff. The pace has been pretty quick, to be fair. But I've got some peanuts on the go now, which are salty and therefore I feel like eating KP peanuts. You could say KP looks after me.
After the aid station at El Reventon, there's a very steep climb up through the forest to Pica Ovejas, Pica Corralejo, and ultimately Refugio Punta de las Rocas. Looking back down the ridge from this point, there are some simply astonishing views of the clouds that you've just run through. Much like last time when leaving the aid station at El Pilar, you're met with instantaneous cloud cover. The steep climb from El Reventon means that you're soon above the clouds, and the sun shines fiercer than ever. The temperature soared from 16 to 26 degrees in a matter of half an hour, and very quickly I had to stop and put on sun cream. Having already felt dicey at the last aid station, I was now beginning to wilt in the Spanish sunlight. The temperature wasn't the only thing increasing, as the altitude was steadily climbing as well. In fact, the next 20 kilometres would all be above 2,000 metres. Adding this to the fact that I'd been on the go for 6 hours at this point, and this was looking like a recipe for disaster. But for now, I kept going. How could I not when there was such amazing views all around?
Okay, that really is the best view in the world. there. We're nearly at the halfway point. I have felt better. I'm feeling better than I was at Reventon. I'm still feeling kind of shite.
A little over the halfway point brings you to Refugio Punta de las Roques. Looking back down the ridge, you see the clouds simply cascading down from the east to the west side of the island. While not an official aid station, they did fill up my water here, which was really nice as it was really hot by this point. The temperature was pushing nearly 30 degrees. Some way off in the distance, I could also begin to resolve the telescopes on top of the Roque de los Muchachos. This was equal parts an encouraging sight as well as a daunting one, as they still seemed quite far off in the distance, and I knew I'd have to run a long way along the ridge to get there, all of it exposed to the beating sun as I was now above the tree line.
Doing alright. Can see Tenerife again. Just gotta keep going.
Soon enough, I met Joel for the third time in the race. The resident of La Palma, an experienced ultra runner, offered me water as well as sage advice.
Do you want any water?
Yeah, I fucking love some water.
Do you want to drink it or
Yeah.
fill it? You
okay.
can take it. By 4 minutes after my father, like the time before, so
It's
really good.
It's kind of hard now, not gonna lie, mate. It's like it's the last since the Reventon, it's been bad. Like especially at this bit because there's no trees. There's no shade.
The sun is so hot today.
Joel explained that conditions like these were really difficult to race in if you're not accustomed to them. He basically told me, if it's not the heat that gets you, it will be the climbing, and if it's not the climbing that gets you, it will be the altitude, and if it's not the altitude that gets you, it will be the time on feet. While this didn't exactly help my confidence, it did help me understand that I really needed to pace this race better or I wasn't going to finish.
We're above 2,000 meters and above the tree line, which I'm not enjoying because there's no shade, but I'm convinced I can make it to the Roque. And if I can make it to the Roque, then I can finish. So let's keep going.
While I was indeed confident that I could make it to the Roque de los Muchachos, it would require me to run in damage limitation mode if I was going to get there. There was zero tree cover and the sun was blisteringly hot at this point, even though I was well above 2,000 meters. It was absolutely brutal to run in, and it was still a long slog to the top of the Roque. I certainly wasn't the only athlete for whom the conditions were exerting their toll, as I noticed more and more people lying down on the floor, stretchered off the mountain by marshals, and even several helicopters which were whisking badly affected people to safety. People were honestly dropping like flies, and I saw a couple of people dropping out per kilometre at this point. At this rate, I'd be lucky to make it to the next checkpoint at Pico de la Cruz, let alone the Roque or the finish line.
Still not feeling great. I really want to lose some altitude quite badly. At least the view is spectacular.
Soon enough, I arrived at the summit of Pico de la Cruz at 2,351 metres. Shortly after this, I knew there would be an aid station, and from here, there was just 5 kilometres to the top of the Roque, which doesn't sound like much, but each of these kilometres would prove to be torturous. I willed my body forward, telling myself that I could rest properly when I got to the summit and the Roque in just 5 kilometres time. In practice, however, these 5 kilometres took an hour to complete, and I was properly broken by this point already. All I could think was, how the hell am I going to finish this race? And every time I had that thought, I reminded myself that I wasn't at the top of the Roque yet, and I had to get there first. At long last, however, I dragged my sorry ass alongside the first of many telescopes along this ridge, the Isaac Newton telescope, which used to be, when she lived in La Palma at least, CB's office. Right now though, Isaac served as a grueling reminder that I was still 2 kilometres from the top of the Roque. I continued to push closer and closer to the top, and the final climb, which I knew would be the worst one in the race, damn near killed me. But I made it up to the top of the Roque. Upon doing so, I gave CB a hug and then immediately vomited onto my shoes.
alive. Oh, how you doing?
Fucking like it.
Oh, come
Sit down.
Yeah.
I contemplated my predicament at this aid station. I was in a bad way, and if there was anywhere to drop out, this would be the best place to do it, as there was lots of support here. However, I was reasonably close to the end, well, 20 kilometres, but not too bad in the scheme of things. And also, in addition, going downhill would surely be easier, as well as offering me more shade and more oxygen.
Just like last year, I've been sick at the top of the Roque, probably altitude, I don't know. But just like last year, I've decided to keep going. I think I just need some shade and to lower the altitude a little bit. And I think it'll be alright.
The main issue was that any food I had eaten since Reventon had since been thrown up onto the floor, and even the thought of considering eating made me want to throw up again. Even more concerning than this was the fact that I'd thrown up all the fluids that I'd been painstakingly taking on throughout the day. While my hydration had been good before, that was unlikely to remain the case going forwards.
There's trees at last. They are thinner than my hairline, but at last, finally some good fucking shade. I'm still not feeling tip-top condition, but I feel orders of magnitude better than I did at the top of the Roque. And the strategy has been just walk to the forest from the Roque, so we'll kind of see from there. I'm quite enjoying walking, to be honest. Well, very, very gentle jogging, so we'll see.
I reasoned that I probably had enough energy to finish the race without continuing to eat, but I must ensure that I drank at every opportunity to ensure that I didn't suffer from dehydration.
We're at 58k, although I might not look it, I am feeling a lot better than I was about an hour and a half ago. The more elevation I lose, the better I feel. It's incredible. Only 15k to go left in the race, so we'll get there. Maybe slowly, but we will get there.
Every time my watch buzzed through a kilometre, I took this as a reminder to keep drinking. Every time I had a pee, I took this as another indication to drink some more liquids. With this plan, I remained confident that I could still at least finish the race. I'd feel dreadful doing it, but I would at least finish.
At 60k, I've just got my first twinge of cramp. I'm getting massive deja vu to last time I did this race. I'm so close now, in about 13 kilometres or so. It should be at Torrio Tume fairly soon.
It had now been 2 hours since I'd vomited at the top of the Roque and 12 hours since I'd started the race. Despite my carefully concocted plan of walking very slowly down the hill and ensuring that I drank constantly to remain hydrated and combat dehydration, this wasn't actually working out too well for me. Earlier in the race I'd been pissing every 20 or 30 minutes, and now it was yellow, and in fact I'd stopped pissing altogether at this point. This was clearly really bad. I had to get down as soon as possible, but I couldn't go any faster. At the Torre del Time aid station, I forced myself to have as much fluid as possible. The only thing I could stomach eating was fruit, so I managed to shove some of that down as well, and I kept going.
Hola! Muchas gracias!
The descent down to Tazacorte was slow, tricky and technical. The path was by no means easy to run on at all. It was at once incredibly steep and incredibly rocky. This meant that you had to pick your path very carefully unless you wanted to twist your ankle, which I definitely didn't fancy doing at this point in the race. Glancing back up the mountain towards the Roque, I was proud of what I'd achieved, but I knew I'd have to dig deep to keep going. All the while the late afternoon sun was baking me, and I forced myself to keep drinking at every available opportunity. I had, however, long given up eating at this point in case it made me throw up again. At long last, however, a mad dash through the mercifully tarmac streets of the town of La Costa brought me to within touching distance of the Atlantic Ocean for the first time since 6 AM this morning. The only problem was, I was still about 250 metres above sea level.
That done there was Tazacorte, and after that we just have that last kick in the balls, which is climbing back up to to Los Llanos, 400 meters. Oh, I can't wait. I'm so happy to be losing all this elevation now. I'm ecstatic. Gracias. Gracias.
By the time I arrived in Tazacorte, I could barely walk, let alone run. Very cruel was the fact that I had to walk through the marathon finish line in order to get to the final aid station. As soon as I sat down, I realised that this was a mistake. If I stopped moving, I knew I was going to be sick, so I had to keep going. I therefore quickly filled up my water and prepared myself for the final 5 kilometers of the race.
Oh, go, Mick. Daniel, vente para acá, Daniel.
Last 4k, maybe 3k, I don't know, we're exactly 70k, and unfortunately I can't remember if the race is 73k or 74k, so it's either 3 or 4k to go. It would be nice to know, but I forgot. But I guess we'll find out. Oh, let's not stack it on this shitey riverbed. I'm absolutely gone. I nearly collapsed in Tazacorte, but this is so close now that I can't stop. Addicted to the shindig.
Just 3 kilometers and one horrific climb stood between me and finishing the Transvulcania. Although by this point it was 7 PM, the walls of this dried up canyon still radiated heat in all directions and it was still stiflingly hot. I now hadn't had a piss in 2 or 3 hours and I'd nearly collapsed in Tazacorte, but I wasn't going to let that stop me from finishing the race. And suddenly, at long last, I arrived in Los Llanos with 1 kilometer left to go in the race. And it was flat.
Gracias.
The finish line was in sight at last.
Welcome in, your finisher of the Transvulcania.